when I'm saying, can you hear me clearly? Because Sally, I'm getting like a delayed sort of.
I can hear you, Lee.
Not hearing Sally well.
We're live. Okay. Hi everyone. My name is Kendra with AFAP Children in the Fields campaign. Welcome to Children in the Fields campaign's live Thursday. We're going to start in just a few minutes to give people time to connect. And while we wait, if everyone wants to write into the comments where you're joining us from, to start the conversation. We have a few people who are monitoring the comments and will be answering questions as they're able. But there's a question and answer period at the end after we have our prepared questions and answers with our guests. But if you want to enter your own questions into the chat box, whenever you think of them, we'll be collecting those and then answer as many as possible at the end of the interview. Okay. All right, we have 27 people watching so far. Someone from Washington State. Rachel Wright from Rachel Wright Jr. from North Carolina. Welcome. Oh, we lost Lee. All right, well, I'll just go ahead and get started. My name is Kendra Mosley. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Children in the Fields campaign's live Thursday. Today, we are having a part 2 conversation about the coronavirus. Last week, we discussed how it impacts farm worker health, and we had guest speakers from Migrant Clinicians Network. That was a really productive conversation, really informative. And today, we're having part 2 of that conversation, talking about the impact of the virus on the agricultural industry as a whole. Again, I'm Kendra Mosley. I'm the communications coordinator for AFAP Health and Safety Children in the Fields campaign. And I'm joined by Sally Worley from Practical Farmers of Iowa. We have a couple other guest speakers that we're planning to be on today. We'll hope that they join us. But for now, it's just me and Sally. And just a few things that I want to mention before we get started. This is National Farm Worker Awareness Week, a time for expressing appreciation for all of the often unseen work that our farm workers are doing for us. AFAP Health and Safety is running an annual national long sleeve shirt drive for our farm workers. So please visit our blog, afaphs.wordpress.com, to see the daily messages that we are putting up there for NFA. Also, please make sure to keep coming back to this page for weekly Facebook Live broadcasts on various topics relevant to farm workers and farm worker children. And I think we have Lee back. Hi, Lee. You're back. Great. So I'm still doing an introduction, and I introduced Sally a little bit. This is Lee Wicker from North Carolina Growers Association. And we're also expecting Baldemar Velásquez from Farm Labor Organizing Committee in North Carolina, but he has not yet joined. For those who are new to our page, the Association of Farm Worker Opportunity Programs has 52 member organizations that all operate the Department of Labor's National Farm Worker Jobs Program, NFJP. We are in all of the states except for Alaska and the District of Columbia. And within AFAP, we have health and safety programs and the Children in the Fields campaign. And Children in the Fields campaign is where you are right now. So we advocate on behalf of migrant and seasonal farm workers and their children. These children can often seem invisible. They can feel invisible. They're left out of the law. They're left out of the educational system. And they're often just left out of the conversation entirely. So that's why we use this platform and other avenues to raise their profile among the general public, partly by showcasing the essays and the artwork that they submit to us every year through our art and essay contest. By the way, 2020 contest is coming soon. That's opening up on April 1st, so keep your eyes out for that announcement. It'll be right here on Facebook and also on our website. Yeah, so as I was saying, market and seasonal farm worker children are incredibly talented individuals who have incredible obstacles to overcome. And speaking of obstacles, we just endured a pretty tumultuous week this past week with the coronavirus, during which many non-essential businesses were shut down in many states and only essential personnel were permitted to continue going to work. And it was determined that farmers and farm workers are essential. So they are going to work, obviously, because we have to eat. So everyone's wondering, how is all of this upheaval affecting the agricultural industry, the farm worker families, and everyone's livelihoods? And to find out, we've invited several speakers, as I've already mentioned. So welcome, Lee and Sally. Welcome to the broadcast. Thanks. This is Sally Worley from Practical Farmers of Iowa, and Lee Worley from North Carolina Growers Association. Just a quick note, AFOP and Children in the Fields campaign is facilitating this conversation. We do not endorse the opinions of any speakers necessarily, so just to put that in there. To start out with Lee, he joins us from North Carolina. He's the deputy director of the North Carolina Growers Association, which is the nation's largest H2A user. He's served there since 1997, and his work includes government affairs, labor relations, regulatory advocacy, public policy development, compliance training and support, member services, political affairs, and grassroots programs for the 650 farmers in the cooperative. Lee understands the unique challenges of farm labor management and compliance because he's lived it for 40 years. Lee is a proud advocate for farmers and farm workers. Sally Worley is the executive director of Practical Farmers of Iowa. Practical Farmers equips farmers to build resilient farms and communities. Sally has worked there in several different roles since 2007. She has undergraduate degrees in horticulture and environmental studies from Iowa State University, and she's currently completing an executive master's in public administration from the University of South Dakota. So we're happy to have you two. Hopefully Baldemar Velásquez will also join us eventually. He's the president and founder of the Farm Labor Organizing Committee. If not, we will have a separate conversation with him later. So we'll just dive right into the questions, and we'll start with you, Sally. Just 1 second. Let me get this started here. Okay, so the first question is, how do you think the COVID-19 will affect or is affecting U.S. farms?
Well, that's certainly a big question, and I think one that is on a lot of our minds. And I think the answer to that is evolving daily. And the complete short answer is we don't really know. We don't know how long this is going to last or how far the reach will be. There is a lot of uncertainty right now. As you already said, Kendra, farmers have been deemed essential workers, so they are still working and they are still producing food. So we will still have food. How we get that food and how it's being distributed might change a little bit. And hopefully the silver lining of this will be in the long term that this shows an opportunity for us to have a more resilient food and farm system, one where the autonomy and the economics of the food system is more with the farmers and the farm workers and more concentrated around where they are than far from the farm gate. Farmers are already an isolated group, and they were so pre-COVID-19. And a lot of what we do at Practical Farmers is help them create networks so that they have peer support groups. One of our farmers' recent sentiments was this. I will read what he said. He said, "I dislike using the phrase, but a perfect storm might be at the door of many farmers this spring. Grain prices, which is a lot of what we produce here in Iowa, were bad earlier this winter, and grain prices have been bad for Iowa farmers for a few years now. But now they are much worse. He was surprised to see what the local elevators were bidding. And he says there's enough tension, but all of us now are cut off from our local social gatherings. These local social gatherings include places like their libraries, their coffee shops, their bars, even their churches are closed off. So they don't have these outlets that they typically have to talk to people, and they are even more isolated during this really challenging time. So groups like Practical Farmers and others are putting together a lot of opportunities virtually, which are new for a lot of farmers, but still very important so that they can continue to get peer support during this time. Kendra, I think you might be muted.
Thank you. I was. The next question was, how do you foresee COVID-19 affecting food distribution in the U.S.?
We have had a couple of visioning sessions this week to help us plan for our next strategic plan. And one of the questions that we had during the visioning session was, what do you think agriculture will look like in the next 20 years? And specifically, the impacts of the coronavirus came up. And I think that some people are kind of hopeful about that. One person mentioned that this virus is just really showcasing the vulnerability of our food system, is showcasing how verticalized it is, which is problematic in times like this. And they think it provides an opportunity for us to bring it back to a more resilient food system, one much in line with what Practical Farmers is working toward, where farmers have autonomy in decision making, and the money generated from food systems is going back to farmers and farm workers rather than going far away from the farm gate, which is currently what is happening. And hopefully that this can point out the kind of leadership and food system we all need. Another person during this listening session commented that we know things are changing and it's hard to know what it's going to look like, but it's really important for us to be aware of the opportunities that emerge. And he said he anticipates seeing in agriculture with a greater emphasis on resilience and on self-reliance. The kind of work that PFI is doing will be amplified because the need will be more apparent. And that need is really focusing on community needs and taking care of people in communities. We know that for the people selling direct, keeping markets open as essential food access points is really important. And they are looking for some guidance from state leaders on how they can do that while minimizing risks, such as not allowing sampling, not allowing tablecloths, different things like that that markets can do to still stay open. But what one of my colleagues said is that she is really hearing that farmers are motivated and rising to the occasion to provide food, and maybe even more so now in this situation we find ourselves in.
That's wonderful. Sorry, I'm still learning this technology platform. Let's see. Okay, next question. Are the growers seeing a higher demand for crops with the grocery store shelves being empty? I know I've been going to the grocery store and it's empty every time I go.
Yeah, so there are some immediate losses, particularly for people selling to restaurants, that they suddenly have all of these bumper crops that they were selling to restaurants. But overall, farmers who are selling direct are absolutely seeing an increase in demand. The Iowa Food Cooperative is an online ordering platform that people use to order and pick up Iowa products. This cycle, they closed their cycle a day early because of so much demand, but they had $12,000 in sales more than their highest sales day in that 2-week cycle. Farmers markets, some farmers markets have already announced delay in opening here in Iowa, which concerns farmers. However, at the same time, they're getting increased requests from people because there aren't eggs, there aren't meat, there aren't vegetables in the stores like typical. So the farmers are quickly adapting. Some of them are offering home delivery. Some are offering meetups in parking lots where they're making sure that they have social distancing. I just picked up beef from one of our local farmers yesterday, and she had a system where I picked up the meat and talked through the window and set my money out. And so they're adapting pretty quickly to it, and it hopefully will be an opportunity. A few years ago, when the avian flu went rampant through our country, we experienced a lot of impact here in Iowa. And we reached out to all of our members who raise birds that are not in the very large concentrated facilities that saw a lot of the negative impacts. And all of those who had outside flocks or smaller flocks had increased sales, increased demand, and they were able to raise their prices and increase their margins on those. And those kinds of impacts had lasting effects for them. So, while this is a really anxious time, hopefully there will be increased local food and more infrastructure for people to get their food locally. I feel really fortunate because I already have a good relationship with multiple farmers. So I have eggs, meat, produce, and I'm not worried about those things. Toilet paper is still, I don't know where my future lies with that, but my food I feel have covered, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think more people will find those outlets. And you have the thing running on the screen there. We are promoting our members with local foods on our website so other people can access that food as well.
Great. Thank you, Sally. We were just joined by Baldemar Velásquez from Farm Labor Organizing Committee. Welcome, Baldemar. And I didn't get to properly introduce you, so let me just back up for a minute and say a few words. Baldemar Velásquez, as many of you all probably know, he's the president and founder of the Farm Labor Organizing Committee, or FLOC. And under his leadership, FLOC has set international precedents in labor history, including being the first union to negotiate multi-party collective bargaining agreements and being the first to represent H2A international guest workers under a labor agreement. Baldemar is an internationally recognized leader in the farm worker and immigrants' rights movements. So welcome, Baldemar. Just want to say hi. So the next question, we came on at a great time. The next question is for Baldemar. There have been varying responses among the state governors, some shutting down non-essential businesses, others issuing shelter-in-place orders. How is this affecting the agricultural industry in each state? I'm not sure if Baldemar can hear us. Just one moment while we try to get him logged in. Baldemar, can you hear me now? Baldemar, can you hear me now? Okay, so we're having some technical difficulties.
I can't hear anything.
Oh, I can hear you now. Can you hear me? There might be a little bit of a delay.
Can't hear anything.
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me now? No, I guess not. So we'll move on while we figure out Baldemar's audio, and we'll ask Lee the next question. Hey, Lee. Lee, are you with us? Uh-oh. We lost Baldemar. Hey, Lee, can you hear me? All right, so Lee is, I think, indisposed at the moment. Lee, can you hear me? Okay, so we're gonna pop out for a second. I'm gonna move on quickly just to a question for Sally. So here we go, Sally. Sally, what is the margin for error, economically speaking, for a typical grower? Are people in the industry worrying that this pandemic could exceed that amount?
So the margin in error varies depending on the enterprise and production system, but in general, it is not, their margins are slim. So they are definitely worried that this could exceed that amount. But fortunately, there are a lot of people coming to aid, and there are a lot of relief packages in the works. For example, the National Sustainable Ag Coalition is working on the federal package that's coming out and making sure that there is assistance for direct marketer farmers, socially disadvantaged, and beginning farmers in that. Farm Aid and American Farmland Trust are also coming out with some kind of aid packages. So it is definitely a concern, but one that people are jumping onto really quickly.
Okay, sorry. Next question is, were farmers able to begin planting since this virus started spreading right at springtime?
So I can answer this for Iowa, and I know it's different in different parts of the country. But as you said, they're considered essential workers, so they are still working. Currently, what's going on is a lot of greenhouse planting, early crop planting, kidding and lambing is all going on right now. April 10th is a big date here in Iowa because that's when farmers can get into the plant season crops like corn and soybeans, the predominant crops here in Iowa. And a lot of those systems are set up for not a ton of people to do that work. So that's not changing a whole lot. When that will change for Iowa to be more in line with some of the other states, you know, this is impacting, I would imagine, states like California more right now, where they rely on a lot of workers for their planting season. We'll see more of that impact during harvest if this is still going on when we do need more hired workers in. And then another consideration is all of their supplies. Many people purchase a lot of their supplies the season prior, so they should be pretty set for now. But as you know, the system's disrupted more, they might have a delay in purchasing additional inputs for their farm.
Okay, so we've been rejoined by Baldemar and by Lee. Can you both hear me, Lee and Baldemar? I'm
Yes.
not. Oh, good. Baldemar, can you hear me? Still getting a no from Baldemar, I think, which is unfortunate. Hey, Lee, I'll just put up a question that I had ready for you. What are growers doing to promote the safety and prevent themselves from getting infected by the virus? As you probably, as you know, the grower community is aging. The average age, I think, is over 50, so they might be in that risk category.
Yeah, I don't think that the growers are doing anything different than anybody else or anything special. They're limiting their travel. I think most growers are adopting sort of a stay-in-place approach. Obviously, the safest place for everyone to be is at home and not out and about. So, you know, I don't. You're right about growers, the grower community in general, being in the upper 50s, early 60s, and so potentially more vulnerable there. I don't think most growers feel that way, but I also think that they've embraced and respect the recommendations from the CDC and the other government health organizations. So they're trying to comply.
And what are they doing to prevent the virus from spreading among migrants and in migrant housing and migrant centers? I know you mentioned just offline to me that North Carolina Growers Association brings farm workers on campus to do different trainings. Can you mention the different procedures that you put into place for that?
Yeah, sure. So North Carolina Growers Association is a joint employer cooperative that participates in the H-2A guest worker program, and we plan to bring about 9,000 workers to North Carolina this year for our 650 members to grow about 50, 60 different labor-intensive crops. And our average farmer at the peak of harvest will have 14 H-2A workers and several, other local workers employed on the farm. And so they want to be farmers, not experts on labor and employment law and the H-2A regulations. So we've centralized the process so that all the workers coming in to go to work for our members come through our offices in Bass, North Carolina, for orientation, where we do the I-9s and show safety videos about pesticide training, and they meet with the labor union and other advocates, farm worker health folks. And so in trying to comply with the social distancing requirements, we've, last year this time, or in a normal year, on a Friday or Saturday, it'd be very common to come to NCGA and find 300, 400, 500, 600 workers all there at the same time. And so we've asked the recruiter agents that we work with in Mexico to, ask the workers not to come to Monterey to pick up the visas and spend the night, just wait for their call, come pick them up when they're ready. The charter bus company is taking everybody's temperature when they get ready to leave Monterey, head for the border. Their temperature is taken when they get ready to cross the border by the Customs and Border Protection folks. And so we've asked the charter bus company to, we bought bag lunches for the guys to eat as the first meal after they cross the border. And we've asked them to stop at certain places for the workers to get food and be able to use restrooms. There's restrooms on the bus, of course, but when the buses refuel, to stick to certain locations and encouraging the workers. We've sent the CDC Spanish version of the how to stay safe and what the symptoms look like for COVID-19. And so we're encouraging the workers to avoid contact with folks, on the way up here. When they get to Bass, we've asked the charter company to stage the buses to come in so that we never have more than 2 buses on campus at any time, which would be in the range of 80 to 90 people. And then we've asked the workers not to congregate in closed groups, and we call the workers in by grower groups. So, 10 to 16 people max into the office space at one time. And so we're trying to get the workers to embrace the recommendations about social distancing. And one of the big things that we're asking the workers to do now is it's very popular. They don't work on Sundays for everybody to load up in the van or bus and go to town and spend all day at Walmart and the flea market and going to the Mexican restaurants and those kinds of things. And so we're asking them to adopt the stay in place sort of protocol where they can order their food and supplies online from Walmart and one person go pick them up, or have one guy go do all the shopping for everybody at 6 o'clock in the morning at Walmart when, it's been closed and they've been cleaning all night. Get in there, get what you need, get back to the farm. The idea is you're safer at the farm than you are anywhere else. And so as far as the housing goes, the growers, this time of year, growers are adding workers, but they're not filling up their labor housing where the workers live. The housing's been inspected and approved by government inspectors, state inspectors, OSHA inspectors. And so we're asking workers to spread out in the camp, because most camps are not nearly full, and to practice all the safe, all the recommendations for safety, wiping down common use areas frequently, providing them the supplies, all of those things. So that's just sort of a general overview of what we've tried to do, because we cannot farm. Our guys are in this program because they can't find U.S. workers who want to do these jobs. And so we cannot grow the labor intensive crops that we're growing in North Carolina without these workers is absolutely critical. And so our message to our workers is, we want you to be safe and healthy, and you want to be safe and healthy. And by doing that, we protect your job opportunities. Because if somebody gets sick, we're very concerned that the government will just shut the program down. And then we're already under extreme economic stress. Our growers are hanging on by a fingernail financially. And if we were to lose the program at the beginning or the middle of the season when we're trying to plant, and we've borrowed a lot of money. We spent a lot of money to get to this point in the season and be ready to plant. It would just be devastating. We'd be in. A lot of growers would end up having to file bankruptcy.
Yeah. I believe Baldemar's audio is working. Baldemar, can you hear me now?
Yes. I can hear you now. Thank you.
Yay! Wonderful. Okay, so Lee, thank you very much for answering that question. Baldemar, the question for you is, how are farm workers being informed about the COVID-19 emergency procedures at their places of work? I think Lee just talked a little bit about this. And I know as the founder and president of FLOC, you are probably hearing a lot from the farm workers themselves. What do you have to share from them?
I can verify a lot of the things that Lee was saying. They're doing a magnificent job responding to this crisis. And we'll work along with them to reinforce the information, the social distancing, the constant cleaning and sanitizing of the common use facilities. We'll continue to reinforce those things. We got our own set of things that we respond to workers when they call. And we've instructed staff to ask questions, especially as the season goes on, to identify symptoms and make sure that information gets to the proper employer and to the association. The area that troubles us the most, however, are these independent farm labor contractors that are many in our experience are notorious for not doing things that are kosher, and we're after a lot of them to comply with the federal regulations. Now, when something like this comes up, it's going to be a little more elusive, and we're going to keep a close eye on that, and hopefully with the help of some of the workers that are part of the NCGA, we can flag and identify some of these things where we need to have a response. I mean, if we're going to stop the spread of this virus, we're going to have to be inclusive of everybody, regardless of their immigrant status. And there are still plenty of undocumented workers that may not work on NCGA farms and may work on other farms that we're concerned about. That's particularly true here in Ohio and in Tennessee and Kentucky and other states where we have outreach with workers. So it's going to be a challenge, but we're glad to have the partnership with the North Carolina Grower Association, who have much better management and oversight of the constant relations that are required to keep workers healthy on the job and doing the cultivating and harvesting that needs to be done this year.
Absolutely, I agree, Baldemar. Have you spoken to farm workers about the virus yourself? What is their reaction? Like, is there any kind of panic among the farm worker community, as there is among the general public?
Well, there is some degree of fear, but that fear is a lot of times it's mixed, not only exposure to the virus, but what the impact it's going to have on their jobs. Many of these workers that come, I mean, their primary purpose is to work and to make money to support their families. That opportunity being gone, or if that's disrupted in any way, that's going to be pretty catastrophic. So that's one of the reasons we're looking into the stimulus bill. If it's going to reach these workers, we're glad that the AFL-CIO has put out the call for any subsidizing or assistance to the general worker population, that it extends to these group of workers regardless of their immigration status.
Thank you, Baldemar. Lee, the next question is for you. Are there any crops that you worry about in connection with COVID-19 more than others because of the real or perceived threat of contamination?
Well, obviously the food crops are would be the focus of most of the concern, but I don't want to start naming specific crops and get everybody scared about going out and purchasing those. And you had asked Sally earlier about what they were seeing in terms of demand, and it's my understanding that the demand for like sweet potatoes, which is harvested in the fall, stored in warehouses through the winter and spring and packed as they're needed, that like there's a huge demand for sweet potatoes right now. And but there's a lot of one of the spring crops that is extremely time sensitive is like strawberries, and we're just on the brink of strawberry season in North Carolina, and North Carolina has great strawberries, and our growers adopt and the workers embrace safe handling practices and washing their hands even before the COVID outbreak. So nobody should be afraid. A friend of mine called me last week and said, well, I got all my workers in, and I said, that's fantastic. I'm really glad. And because people are nervous about it. Baldemar's right. The workers are calling. They're nervous about, are we coming? Are we coming? Is the government going to shut it down? The growers are calling. They're nervous. And so this grower was calling. He said, I got them all in. I said, that's fantastic. He said, now I'm worried that the public won't go out and buy, the strawberries and the peaches and the peppers and the green beans and the sweet corn. And I said, I get that. So, our message should be, we're doing everything we can to be safe, and the food supply is safe, and go out and support your local farmers and give them a hug, and the farm workers too, for working hard, doing a good job.
Elbow bump, right? Not even that. Virtual hugs. So in what kind of scenario would you, or would a grower hypothetically abandon a crop or count the season a loss and just look ahead?
Growers are scrappy and they're survivors. And so, they never, ever want to quit on a crop. So I'm hesitant to give you a scenario where they would quit on a crop. But, the most obvious thing that I could think of is, and I can't remember the scientific name for the plants that continue to bloom.
The E. coli?
Pardon?
E. coli?
No. When a plant that continues to bloom, as long as you pick the fruit off, it will continue to bloom and produce, like strawberries and cucumbers. And if the H2A program got shut down, our growers have turned to the H2A program as the last resort to be able to hire dependable, farm workers who want to do farm work and show up for work every day. And so, if the H2A program got shut down because of COVID-19, our growers they'd be forced to evaluate their crop portfolio and decide, what was salvageable in that portfolio. And so, super labor intensive, extremely time sensitive crops like strawberries and cucumbers, if you don't have the labor there, you got to abandon, because you don't pick the fruit off, the plant's going to quit producing. So fruit and vegetable crops would be the most sensitive, obviously. And then the growers would evaluate and try to determine what crop it would be most profitable, or crops would be most profitable going forward with the amount of labor that they have available to them at that time.
Very good points, Lee. Baldemar, there's been a few comments about this already, but there's, just in the past week, there's been some confusion about the visa processing. as well as farm workers already within our borders who may be too scared to go to work for many reasons now, not to mention documentation. Now there's also the fear of getting the coronavirus. So do you foresee a labor shortage? We're kind of dancing around that question. And why or why not?
Well, we do have a labor shortage in this country, contrary to many of our allies in the farm worker movement. I guess the narrative is that if you put wages high enough, that you'll get more domestic workers to do that job. I don't think that's true. I'm originally from South Texas. We started migrating in the 50s to the north to harvest crops, and that population is pretty much aged out. And the children, we did a good job during the war on poverty in the 60s and 70s, getting kids trained in school and to turn to other occupations, more professionals. To this day, a lot of young people that were little kids back in the 70s and 80s in our union, they're now teachers and doctors and lawyers. Good for them. But that depleted the domestic workforce, and we don't have, in particularly short-term seasonal crops, you're not going to get American workers to try to make a living 12 months of the year on short-term crops. There's going to have to be a seasonal workforce that can come in and do that harvest. So we're going to have a need to open our borders enough and have a visa program that brings workers in temporarily. So yes, we have a worker shortage, but we can fill it if we can have a fluid program that because we have to. Well, this ties into a larger issue that I think Lee agrees with us on, and that has to do with the fact that we live in a global economy, and we're in competition under a lot of stress here in the U.S. with competitive growers in other countries that import crops into the United States, and the drivers of that are the manufacturers and retailers and large corporate growers who have offshore growing operations that puts us under extreme competition in this country, and we have to do something about that. And that the workers themselves are fluid in terms of migrating. Even within Mexico, they migrate from one part of the country to another to harvest crops. We have to get a handle on that, and we have to create a system that employs farm workers in a just way. But in order to do that, you have to preserve the farms where they come to work on. And the competition between small family farms that have labor-intensive crops, as Lee was saying, if the average workforce on their farms is less than 20 compared to corporate growers who have 800 workers or 2,000 workers, and they grow the same crop in Mexico and other places, that's an extreme pressure on these family farms in the middle part of the U.S. and the deep South.
Thank you, Baldemar. And in fact, I'm going to skip ahead in our question lineup and just piggyback right off of that and ask Lee here. Hang on. What kind of a backup plan do growers have if the H2A program is put on hold? I know that's something we don't want to think about since a lot of your growers seem dependent on the program. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Like I was saying, they've turned to this program as the last option. So there's really not a great plan if we lose the H2A program. So North Carolina Growers Association is a joint employer. That means our growers can share labor. So we could move some of the workers around and share among the certified farmer members of certified being by U.S. Department of Labor approved. We can share those workers among the growers, but if it would still force the growers to, I think, to evaluate their crops and to decide what is salvageable and most profitable with the labor that's available. H2A workers can transfer from one farm to another through a petition process with U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Service. I think there would be some of that going on, but just as one example, right now, Florida is winding down in citrus harvest. And so if the H2A program were to be suspended in the next week or two, God forbid, growers would quickly be trying to reach out to friends and colleagues in Florida and ask, those workers if they would please come and work. And they can legally. I think the problem is these guys have left their families in Mexico. They've been up here picking citrus for 6 months. They've made all the money that they need to make to take care of their families for the year, and they're ready to go home, and they're not going to want to transfer up. And so it would be a huge, huge problem. And so that's why we are emphasizing to our workers, and we pushed out all this information to the growers to share with the workers and just constantly be vigilant and do all the things that are recommended and stay put on the farm as much as possible, because we need everybody to stay safe and healthy and keep working. Our food supply is a national security issue, and it would be a huge mistake, as Sally was saying earlier, to allow our labor-intensive crops to farms to die and to import all the fruits and vegetables, because at a time like this, when you have a crisis, if you can't get those things, it will be terrible. It will be a disaster. And I tell people all the time that I work for the best people on the planet, the farmers and the farm workers who get up every morning and put on their work boots and go out and do something meaningful and substantive and real, things that you can touch and eat and enjoy. And we should never, ever take the farm workers and the farmers for granted. We need them, and we can't lose sight of that.
Yeah, that's a great note to end our prepared questions on. I want to open up the time, since it's getting short, for some question and answers from the audience. And I know one of them actually was already mentioned, but somebody is asking if we can talk about it really quickly again. She said, what are the farmers doing to prevent the virus from spreading? Just a quick short list. And I think, Lee, you had mentioned that you're really encouraging people to spread out, and you're really discouraging any trips to town, that you make sure only one person goes shopping, and that they go early in the morning before everyone else gets there. And also providing hand washing stations. Is that right?
Yep.
And encouraging vigilant hand washing practices and
aggressive cleaning.
How about if someone gets sick? Do you know, it's just so hard to get testing. I've heard from so many of my friends that they've got symptoms, but they can't actually get a test and get confirmed. Yeah.
So we've had great conversations with the farm worker health community in North Carolina. It's a very strong, vibrant group throughout the state. And so we've got access to right now for up to 4,000 test kits if needed. And so if someone shows symptoms, we're going to insist. And I think some folks in the migrant health community are nervous that workers, because of their economic need, won't come forward with, if they have symptoms, because they don't want to miss work. So we're strongly encouraging the growers to be paying close attention and telling the workers that you don't have to be afraid. If you have symptoms, you're much better off to tell us, so that we can go and get tested and confirm that you don't have it, or if you do have it, to protect everybody. And so it's just about training and education and getting people to understand how important this is. But if we have a case, then we're going to deal with it. We will make sure that we isolate the individual and take care of them. We were prepared to go get hotel rooms, or if we can't put them in quarantine at the farm, NCGA has some housing. I mean, we're going to do whatever it takes to take care of the worker and all the workers. And so this is a time for everybody to work together and look for the very best possible solutions to deal with these issues, and not to, there's no secret that farmers and farm worker advocates and have been at odds for decades and decades over certain policy issues, but now's not a time to be continuing that agitation and hostility. We gotta work together. Everybody's gotta work together, and I really appreciate, Kendra, you guys putting this on. This is very important, I think, for the community to understand and see.
Thank you, Lee. I appreciate the affirmation. And I really appreciate you guys being on here today. And I did skip one question, and I want to come back to it now. And because you mentioned the working relationship a few times that you have with Baldemar. Baldemar, I just want to really hone in on that a little bit, and just, can you mention the one thing? I know there's many things probably that have been positives about the contract and working relationship that Farm Labor Organizing Committee has with the North Carolina Growers Association, but could you mention the biggest accomplishment that you're proud of between FLOC and NCGA?
Well, the most important thing is that there's a forum for dialoguing and processing through issues, problems that may arise on a farm, that there is a respectful dialogue that can occur and get things resolved before they get blown out of proportion. Because to us, the most important role of a union is job security for workers. And job security means tackling the question of food insecurity for families, for poor families. These workers come from Mexico. They're not the high rollers in their home towns. They're struggling, workers who want to sustain, support their families, build a life for their families, educate their kids. Many workers are here working because they want their kids to get through college. They're paying for that education in Mexico, and to try to eliminate the vast amount of poverty that exists throughout Mexico. So food insecurity, hunger, are issues that are tied to employment, and that employment is one of the most important things that that they can get with the employment in the United States with these growers. So I think that unlike places where there is no agreement, the only venues there to take care of problems is labor strife and legal actions and court proceedings that can be tied up for a year, 2 years, 3 years, who knows how long. And that's a heck of a way to try to resolve individual cases and grievances, when we can talk any number of issues with the Growers Association. And I think that's the most important role that we have together, that we have a dialogue, we have a venue of communication, and get things resolved, and so that we keep the people working and the farms productive.
We did have one question. Thank you, Baldemar. Thank you so much. We had one question come in from Benjamin Williams, saying that the U.S. Department of Labor reported that 3.3 million new claims of unemployment have been filed. Has there been any effort by NCGA or Practical Farmers of Iowa to reach out and offer work to these folks that are newly out of work?
Yes, we are posting all of our open job opportunities online. Our growers' super minimum wage rate this year is $12.67 an hour. So yes, we are advertising our jobs through all the local employment service offices in North Carolina. And so the answer to the question is yes, we are trying to hire U.S. workers. That is one of the, that is the foundation and premise of the H-2A program. We're only allowed to bring the foreign workers once we prove that there aren't U.S. workers who want these jobs, one, and two, that we've made an ongoing commitment that we will hire any U.S. worker who wants these jobs during the first 50% of the employment period. So that's a great question.
Sally, do you have anything to add?
Sure. So right now our focus is really on helping our farmers find immediate markets for their products. And so we are having kind of a virtual meetup tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central to help them do that. We also do have a Labor for Learning program, which is aimed at aspiring farmers. And we are trying to fill those positions right now. We might have more applicants for those positions, but we are advertising those at this time.
And you've had all your questions toward the beginning. Have you had any more thoughts pop up since Lee and Baldemar have been speaking?
I mean, I would just underscore everything they said. They're really the experts with the farm workers. And I think one thing that we can all do is educate our consumers to continue to purchase healthy food and make sure they're using safe handling practices at their homes. They should be doing that all of the time anyways. As Lee said, our farmers are really well trained in safe food handling practices, but you know, consumers, if they're worried about it, can practice those at home as well so that they do not need to be worried about their food being contaminated.
Thank you. I think the last question that we have is about the stimulus package. We haven't touched on that a whole lot, but the question is, will H-2A workers be eligible in that stimulus package? Does anyone know the answer to that?
So I was looking, I was looking through some of the documents that I have on it, and they are specifically mentioned for future educational programs, which is not part of the stimulus package. So I see underserved farmers mentioned as part of the stimulus package, but not farm workers specifically. This language is still being drafted and it's really early. So I'd say we don't know, but we can all encourage our lawmakers to include them in the package.
Lee, did you have something to add?
No, well, I was just going to say I haven't seen the package, but I'd be shocked if H-2A visa holders were included in the package.
We've started to examine some of that, and we're examining right now. There's we think the language does call for H-2A workers and even undocumented people to have benefits extended, even 80 hours pay. And the question of how an employer is going to get reimbursed for that amount, like grower, for example, is one of the things that's being looked at. But of course, we've contended that if there are workers out there doing essential work for the economy, that they definitely ought to receive the same benefits as any other worker in this country.
And I'm just doing more comments now. We don't have a whole lot of time left, but
Kendra, in the National Sustainable Agriculture Coalition's recommendations that food and farm workforce is eligible for paid leave and other support, including access to nutrition and food access programs. They don't specifically call out H-2A workers there, but I do think that this is the time for us to specifically call them out and advocate for them being part of that package.
Absolutely. I think that's about all the time that we have for questions. I just want to close with a few comments. First of all, I thank you all very, very much for joining us. Sally, Lee, and Baldemar, we couldn't have done this without you. You have so much valuable information and insights that we don't have. You know, this is a constantly evolving situation. We want to do what we can to stay abreast of the information. So your comments have been very insightful and informative. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your insights with us. So thank you. I want to highlight again that this is National Farm Worker Awareness Week. Our partners are collecting shirts in over 100 locations across the country. Please go to this website. Let me just type it in. Go to afop.org/NFA for those locations. And also go to our WordPress.com, afophs.wordpress.com for our daily messages for National Farm Worker Awareness Week, and follow Farm Worker Awareness Week for those messages as well. It's put on by our friends over at Student Action with Farm Workers. So any closing comments before we close?
Yeah, one last comment, and I think that this is a message to all these farm worker advocates that if we don't do something about the inequities in the global supply chain, where the competition for our small family farmers and farm workers are coming from outside the United States, it's going to be very difficult for us to sustain agriculture domestically in this country. So we really need to bring into some level of responsibility these global manufacturers and retailers, all the Walmarts, the Costco's, the big tobacco companies, the Reynolds America, all of the big global purchasers of fruit and vegetables around the globe. We have to do something about the trade issues that marginalize agriculture in the United States.
Thank you, Baldemar, and thank you, Lee, from North Carolina Growers Association. Thank you, Sally Worley from Practical Farmers of Iowa, and thank you, Baldemar Velásquez from FLOC. We are very appreciative, and thank you all to our followers for listening in. Stay safe out there, everyone. And this is Kendra Mosley from Children in the Field signing off.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. And so
Adios.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks a lot.
Have a good day.
Stay safe and positive. We'll all get through this. And I completely agree with you that we need to get some changes in our global food system, and hopefully this painful process will make that possible. So we will see. But I will continue to look at all